Hello everyone and welcome back to the DMside. It's a pleasure to have you here. It's a pleasure to be here. And if you are new, feel free to support the channel by clicking the subscription button down below. Ring the bell so that way you don't miss a video. And let's get straight into it. Now, last week on my Instagram, the DMside641 Instagram, links in the description below, I did ask, I set a poll up asking, would you rather have 10 to 15 minute videos where you get a quick recap of how the session went, as well as a quick description of what is coming up in the next session and what I'm planning? Or would you rather a 30-minute plus video where I go into detail about what actually ended up happening in the session, what I think went well, what I think went bad and I'd like to change, and also what I'd like to bring back from that session to future stories, future games, even future campaigns completely, as well as going over what I'm planning for the next session. Now, the difference obviously is that they'd be longer videos, but I would be putting timestamps in if I'm available to do that. I'm not sure if YouTube lets me yet, but I'll put in timestamps if I can, and you can then obviously click through to the parts that you're more interested in. If you really just want to be here for the what went wrong and how do I feel about that and how will I change that, you can click to it. If you're here for the recap, just start from the beginning of the video, or if you want to skip the intro of subscribing because you're already subscribed, then you can click that part. As well as if you just want to get to what have I got planned next, because maybe you're up to this exact same chapter and you just want to get fresh ideas for what to do next in your own sessions and you don't really care about how my sessions went, then you can skip to that part of the video without having to try and click through and find it all. The longer videos with the timestamps was more popular, and so that's what we'll be doing today. So let's see how we go. Let's get straight into a quick recap. The start of this session was really fun. Obviously, we just had the downfall of failing to realize that Helen was a hag, even though it wasn't super obvious. They really would have had to try to work for it. They saved the farm from the scarecrows, but Helen turned into a hag in the safe house with the little boy, killed him, and ran off to go find Hag Mummy. And obviously, we're going to have that be a problem in a couple months' time. Months in the game. Probably months in real life, to be fair, too, depending on how, if we have breaks or whatever. But that's not the point of this video. So, in the morning, there was a knock on the door, and the one and only Savra Balabrenta was at the door looking for Watch. Today was the day of his induction into the Order of the Gauntlet, and we got a lot out of this this moment. So it was all done at the Trollskull Manor. It was not very flash at all. The other players were the witnesses for him joining the Order of the Gauntlet, as well as Watch's creator, Tesla. Now, Tesla doesn't really like to leave the house after his ridicule for bringing this failed experiment to Waterdeep and, embarrassing Lariel Silverhand and the 6 Master Lords of Waterdeep by presenting this failed creature, essentially. And so he really likes to stay inside and build and tinker with new ideas, but he never really finishes them. But Watch had asked him to come and watch him be inducted into the Order of the Gauntlet, and so he mustered up his courage and he went along, and there he was, well out of his comfort zone. So it was a really fun moment because these players really got to enjoy not the flashiness of joining a faction, but kind of what it really is, the standalone moments. And so Savra obviously did an official welcome for Watch, by stating her name and stating the god that she serves and offering him to join the Order of the Gauntlet. He said yes, and then she warned everyone that she would be casting a Zone of Truth, because in our world now she is a paladin. And so she cast Zone of Truth, and it was to make sure that Watch really did understand and was fully ready to make this commitment so that he would not try and lie about joining. Now, it really opened up a very interesting conversation, because the Order of the Gauntlet is known for obviously clerics and paladins and holy knights, essentially, but Watch is an artificer who doesn't really know if he has a god. And so when we were doing the oath, it came up to a point towards the end where he would say aloud that he swears faith, and he swears to himself, his god, and his friends that he will strike down evil and he will do the right thing and believes in morals, and that he will do his best to the best of his ability to protect his friends and people around him. Now, the players stopped and we kind of had a bit of a moment where we went, okay, the whole God thing. And so as players, we all spoke about what that means in 5e, in 5th edition, in Dungeons and Dragons. And so obviously there's gods, and I said to him, I don't want you to feel like you're going to be tied down to being a cleric or or a paladin, whether multi-classing or whether for your character development that you now have to pick a god to really serve. This is merely just an oath that is written out, that they believe in, because most of them do have gods and are paladins and clerics. But you need to remember that there are many religions in in Dungeons and Dragons. There are many temples and shrines to various deities, some that aren't even on the list of pantheon gods. Some worship, greater beings that are like warlocks. They may not worship them, but they have a connection with them, and they aren't technically gods. And so I just wanted to make it clear that there are civilians who worship these gods, and it's really just a matter of the fact that there are gods in the world, and you may believe in one eventually. You may choose to take on a god and follow the teachings of that god. And if you don't, then that's okay, because I don't want you to be tied down to this one line. And I really was unsure when I was actually writing up the oath. And I took various inspirations from Reddit and other websites, as well as older real oaths that have been sworn in real life in history. And I put it in there because I thought it would be ill-advised of me to take out something that is part of the Order of the Gauntlet, which is their faith. And we moved on from it. We agreed that obviously he may not be, a paladin or a cleric, but he definitely agrees with the morals of the Order of the Gauntlet, and that, obviously he understands that there are gods that are in the world and really have shaped the world. So it's not like he can really deny their existence. Again, you could make a character that does deny that existence, which would be really interesting, but he hasn't made that character. So we got past that and we moved on, and he was finally a member of the Order of the Gauntlet. He had a moment with his creator, Tesla, who informed him that over the winter he would be leaving the city to go and see some older Tinkerer friends further up north, where he can enjoy the warmth of Neverwinter, even throughout the winter down in Waterdeep. So we know that over the next month or so, there will be the last few chances that Watch can go and see his creator. Now Tesla will be returning. It's just he doesn't like the cold weather so much. So I always intended that he would not be there in winter. However, come spring, he may return and he may come back with gifts. So, I really want to give you this fun fact, actually, about Savra Bellabranta. Now, if you have played the Princes of the Apocalypse campaign, you would actually know this character. She is one of the Feathergale Knights. She is also one of the Howling Hatred members. And if she doesn't die in your campaign, and you do manage to run Waterdeep Dragonheist, she actually, in the story, she comes back and she has seen the error of her ways, and she feels regret for all the things that she'd done and for being tricked into believing, I think it's Yuan Ti is the wind deity, the god or evil creature that is summoned if that's your final villain, your final temple. But I really love this because I've actually run that game in this world, and we had one of the players who spared her life essentially, and they had this kind of really cool, like, how do I put it, like, I don't know, rivalry against each other, but they still kind of understood each other as honorable knights at the time. And so in our world, I like to believe that she teamed up with him for a while and that he was the one who introduced her to the Order of the Gauntlet. And then from there on, this is how things have gone. And we'll get back to that. There'll be more on that throughout the video. But she's a very cool character who survived and she came back, and I think that's really fun. And I love that Wizards of the Coast, when they were actually creating the Waterdeep Dragonheist game, they really thought about past adventures and brought those characters in. They've done that a few times in other stories as well, so it was very cool. Moving on to the next part of the recap, I do want to point out my biggest mistake of the night. Honestly, it took an hour for me to get through this entire thing. I couldn't believe I'd done it. I've mentioned this plenty of times when talking to people about D&D, about what not to do, and there I go, I let this happen. And it took up a full hour of gameplay. And that was the biggest mistake, which is giving my players time. Literally, there's nothing to do. It's just, okay, you've done your thing for the morning, which was the Order of the Gauntlet induction. You have a huge party coming later tonight. You have the day. Is there anything you'd like to do? And now you might think, well, no, that's a good thing, because now your players can really go and do the things that they want to do. Which I would agree, but the problem is what they want to do is go to the party. And so when you give your players time, they feel the need to fill it. Whether it be with quality gameplay where they use their backstories to try and research things and find stuff and meet some people who may help them, or to go off and actually do something that will have an effect later on. That is quality time spent. But because we're so focused on the story at hand and the missions that have been given to them, we actually had nothing to do. And so they filled it with shopping, they filled it with wandering around, talking to people, talking to each other. And I realized sitting there at the table, I went, I've done such a stupid thing. I've given my players time. And one thing led to another, and eventually I pushed them along and encouraged them along to go to Neverembers mansion, because that's where the action was going to be. So eventually they got there, but I really want to point this out to everyone. If you are a new DM, you are a seasoned DM who just is having a bad night, at the end of the day, don't give your players time unless they really do have something to do. If they have backstories that are involved around investigating murders, then let them go investigate murders in their free time. If they have characters that they have unfinished business with, let them go and do that unfinished business. If they have things that they really do need to buy, and that's actually going to take proper role play to do because it's something that's not common, let them go and buy those things and role play that entire exchange. But if your players are literally waiting for the next part of the story because they've all agreed that that is the next thing, just send them there. Just say, the day goes by, nothing of interest happens. As evening begins to fall, we find ourselves at the point of interest. What would you like to do? So eventually I managed to do that. I just went, I can't do this anymore. Okay guys, you find yourselves at Neverembers mansion. We're going to move on from here. So how did the party go? The party was the biggest part of the session. It took the whole night. The induction into the Order of the Gauntlet probably went for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, because there was some questions along the way and the clarification that I spoke about. Then we had the full hour of my mistake of letting them just wander about the city with no point of interest in sight. And finally, here we are at the party. Now, let's go over who was at the party to begin with, and then we'll talk about what the players actually did. So, first of all, Neverember, obviously he's hosting the High Harvestide Festival party. Then we had Lariel Silverhand and the Six Masked Lords who made an appearance because all the nobles are going to be there. Lariel Silverhand gave a very nice speech about how Waterdeep has survived calamities such as the Sundering. It has survived the time of troubles. It's survived the spell plague. And then she referenced the fact that currently, as of now, El Terrell has disappeared and no one is sure. There are refugees flooding into Baldur's Gate, and some may eventually come up to Waterdeep, and that she mentioned that do not worry because we have all of these systems in place. We have got Vajra, the Black Staff of the city. They have herself. They have the great government system of the Six Masked Lords to keep justice in hand. They have the Griffin Cavalry. They have Force Grey should they ever need them. They have the City Guard, the City Watch. So she really wanted to iterate the fact that even though there are troubling times going on elsewhere in the world right now, that Waterdeep has seen its fair share of calamities and it has not fallen. So it was a rousing speech and everyone was very happy about it, and it built confidence within the nobles because they're the money of the city essentially. So she was going to be there with the Six Lords. We had Blackstaff, Vajra Blackstaff, the Blackstaff was there as well. Volo was there, I threw him in. The Castellantas were there, and fun side fact, they found out that the Castellantas know a bunch of nobles down in Waterdeep. A bunch of nobles in Waterdeep that just recently got sent to prison because of Hootie. So they lost a lot of money. And so now they'd like to get some revenge. And it just so happens that their driver is a red tiefling with half a tail, the exact description of Hootie's assassin. So obviously Hootie went and spoke to them, so we'll get to that in a minute. Who else did I invite to this party? Oh, that's right. Jaxel Bainray, who disguised himself as Captain Zardos Zord, and also the Sea Maidens Fair were the entertainment for the night. And so I structured that whole performance as a very Cirque du Soleil style performance. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, just YouTube Cirque du Soleil performance, and you'll see what I mean. It was very, it felt very posh, very nobly to have that sort of performance going on around on the stage. And so after that we had a few kind of fun minor characters come in. Savra Balabrenta was there, and this is where, side note, I got a really fun moment in where the character that I previously spoke about, that I said they had that little honorable understanding and they were fighting, and he spared her. His name is Marcus Lietdorf, and he was the previous character of a previous player in that exact story, as well as the reference to a Xyrus, who was a Dragonborn, who was also part of that adventuring party, and the person who played Xyrus in that game was the player who now plays Hooty. And so that was really interesting, having them show up, talk to Watch and Hooty, and kind of just throw in those little fun tidbits. You know, if you're a DM, honestly, if you can, just for fun, you don't have to bring these people into the world to be major players, because they're probably too strong by now if you've completed those stories. But you can definitely bring in their names and throw them about and make the players, feel like, my character is still alive. And they're still out there doing stuff. They haven't just vanished because we didn't have a time skip. So that was a really fun moment. Now, what were the players doing during the party? So I left that up to them. I gave them a map of the mansion, and I told them exactly where everyone would be. The places that the guests could go, the places that the wait staff could go, the places that the backstage staff could go. If they were working for the Sea Maiden fairs, they could be put in as a worker behind stage, and where they couldn't go should they take on roles like that. And you know, we offered a lot of different ideas about whether you would like to come in as press for Hooty, whether you would like to come in as nobles, as guests themselves, and you could have fake papers made up. So we really spoke a lot about what they were doing. So Hooty came in as press, and he had Watch come in with him under the guise of, because he's a big tank man essentially, he was Hooty's photographer. And because there's no photos yet in Waterdeep, he was Hooty's paint-ographer, known as Paint. He changed his name because he no longer watches the city, he now paints the portraits for the Waterdeep Whisperer, which was really funny, really entertaining, and so very funny. And you know what, he wrote a lot of different paintings, and Watch is a good painter. Like, he came out with some solid images for that, for those articles. So that's what they were doing. They entered in, they were rubbing shoulders with all the nobles. Obviously with a 24 charisma check, you can kind of, you know, move around the room and get to know almost anybody. We had a really fun interaction with the Castellantas. Victorio Castellanta spoke with Hooty. He basically let him know that he knows who he is, he knows what he's done, and he knows that he would love to come and have him paint and write an article about their estate, which they believe is much nicer than Raynar's, and that he would happily send his driver to collect him. So that was fun, and then they moved on from there. Jagged Jack, however, came in as a noble guest under the guise of Passion Fruit Love. I believe that's what his name was. Definitely Love on the end. This player has a whole crime syndicate family known as the Love family, and so he has various iterations of these halflings, and so Jagged Jack is actually one of these halflings. The other players know of the family, but the characters did not hear the name. They have no idea who he is anyway. So he came in and he very, you know, nobly had his posh accent on, and he had a big mustache to cover his jagged teeth, and he hit it off really well with Lady Castellanta, Amelia Castellanta. She's a massive gossiper, and he was obviously trying to get some information, talking to her about, like, ooh, have you heard about the dead elves in the docks? And oh, have you heard about what happened to Raynar? Which she was very interested in, and she was trying to talk to Raynar, who she sort of got some conversation in there, but she got kind of shoved away eventually, which she was not very happy about. But her and Jack got to gossiping. They found out some information about some red tieflings. He found out some information about the docks and who might be behind it. And so after that, she also invited him to her estate for some tea and gossip, which was actually a lot of fun for them to roleplay, because she also mentioned, I'll send the driver to get you. And so we had this big laugh about the fact that the driver would walk into the yawning portal where they both lied that they were which they're not, and he'd be like, all right, yeah, g'day everyone, I'm here to kill a Mr. Hootie, and I'm here to pick up a Mr. Jack, a Mr. Love, sorry, preferably in that order. And so we had a big laugh about that. It was really fun, good character moments. Giorno, Dr. Smiles, he was part of the waitstaff, and I really liked that because he had a lot of options to talk to the rest of the waitstaff in the kitchen hand, and he had a whole chance to find out the fact that the Xanathar's guild were there spiking the punch with a sleeping potion that he was giving to everyone, but he just didn't do it. He was too busy out on the dance floor, serving drinks, doing his job, but trying to find out information. And so he was only ever listening to anyone out there. And so he did. He found out a lot of information, again, about what's been going on around the city. He heard some stories about El Terrell. He heard about just general magic that's been going on and stories about the winter coming. But unfortunately, because he didn't really investigate in the kitchen and had no interest about what was in the kitchen, he had the best chance to figure out who they were. So that was really fun. He actually went around serving everyone sleeping potion juice, which was so perfect. I was really worried. I was worried he'd figure it out and then be caught on his own, but I didn't expect him to not investigate. So that was really interesting. Then finally we had Damien. Damien decided to be backstage. So he was limited to the backstage area, but he had the perfect sight on all the Sea Maiden Fair performers, as well as he could have gone into the kitchen too. But the best part is that he had a full view of the floor where he could see everything going on. So he watched everyone getting drinks. He watched, there was the toast by obviously Lariel Silverhand. And then, yeah, he opened the curtains and so many different things happened afterwards. So to get rid of Lariel Silverhand, basically the idea is that she, Blackstaff, the Master Lords, they were all there because they had to be. It's one of those festivals where they have to go and show face to the nobles, so that way they feel confidence in them. Even though obviously they don't really have a say in who runs the city, but it is good show. And so once they've done that, they upped and they left because they're very busy people. So that's how I kind of got rid of the strong people in the city for the attack that is about to happen. We're on low level characters. So that finally happened and then she went along. So that's where everyone was. So finally, after the performance of the Cirque du Soleil Sea Maiden Fair pirates, Zada Zordo was walking around. He was talking so much about how great he was, how good the performances are. He was really rubbing shoulders with everyone. And then he went up and they actually used some form of magic to dim the lights, which was a big clue because the lights had dimmed when the elves had been killed. And so they all picked up on that and went, oh, okay, it's definitely them. It's gotta be them, right? So that happened, the show happened at the very end. Everyone had a big cheer, big clap, beautiful. They did a toast, they drank. Everyone had to make Constitution saving throws. Now, luckily everyone made them, including Raynar. I actually thought he was going to pass out. And then battle ensued. The Xanathar mage came in, as well as his 3 thugs. And then we had this huge battle where it did for a moment look like he was going to get kidnapped again. The mage actually used greater invisibility to turn invisible, got behind Raynar, and the thugs were busy fighting off the characters. And then just as he was about to actually take him, and I thought, okay, the thing is, I know that I've written down here that the drow, the gunslinger drows, are not going to let Raynar be kidnapped because their boss wants him freely available so that way he can kind of coax his way into figuring out where this stone is. I made the call, he ran out, he pulled out his gun and shot the mage. Didn't kill him, and he started to flee. And the players all went, all right, so much is happening here. Raynar's gonna be saved, that guy's got a gun. He blew out the mage's shoulder. It's almost the exact wound as to what had happened on the dead elves in the dock ward. We've got so much information here. And the best part is that Damien also heard Zardoz Zord speak in a completely different accent. And so now he is aware that this person may not be who they seem. And Zardoz Zord said that the night did not go how he had expected. He expected to rub shoulders with all the nobles for this to be a completely perfect, beautiful performance, a great night showcasing them so he could start talking up Luskan, talking up how great this place is, how great this Jaxel Bainray is, and really putting his own name out there, as well as trying to figure out where this Stone of Galore might be. So Unfortunately, the mage did just barely get away. There was a chase scene that happened. He managed to Misty Step out of a grapple outside, which is a bonus action, turn himself greater invisible, and then he ran off in 30 feet. He ran off the 30 feet direction in any direction. They tried to track him. They did for a little bit, but then the trail went cold as he ended up flying away. But that's how it was. After that, nothing really interesting happened, and the players spent the rest of the night at the manor. You might be wondering, where were the Castellantes during all of this? My favorite part is because they're so strong, they did not fail a save, and they actually sat down at a table and watched the battle for a while, eventually getting bored, and then they dimension doored out of there, purely just to show them how strong they are, and the fact that these players are actually weak, and that their enemy was weak in comparison to people in the room. So yeah, they could have killed Hootie there, but I don't think they want to get blood on their hands. I mean, they obviously have blood on their hands, but they don't want to get blood on their hands. So the night then went by, everyone was sent home, Reyna and Neverember did survive, and the players were paid 100 gold pieces each. And we ended our session there. So, where to next? Alright, so where to next, you may ask? Now, that is a very interesting question, because I'm definitely doing the next session a bit differently, because I want to add in something that I realize isn't really going to come very naturally. So, first of all, I really want to start the session off with Watcher's first mission. So, he was actually given the mission to go into the field ward and discourage the Xanathar Zentarum gang wars that are kind of happening in there. They're stirring up too much trouble, and the Order of the Gauntlet really want to make a big show showing that this sort of behavior is not going to be tolerated. So it's going to be very fun and very interesting, them finding the key players in those field ward wars to either intimidate them, to take them out themselves, to even maybe try and bring them in. But there's not really going to be much of an option bringing them in. They may even have to frame them, which could be really interesting. I do think it's an easier mission. It won't take that long. I think if they go down the intimidation route and they roll high enough, it will all be solved quite easily. They have actually done a sweep already of the field ward to warn everyone that this may happen the next day. And so all the innocent parties are actually going to be staying in for the night. And so they actually may even show up there and fight both sides of the of the field ward gangs, which could be very interesting because I mean, they're really just going to be thugs and citizens, so I really do hope that they do that. That'll actually be really funny, watching them just absolutely beat down these civilians slash Xanathar thugs and Zentarum thugs. So that's where we're going to start the session. After that, I basically am forcing a 2-week downtime period. I really wanted downtime to come more naturally because you got to remember, Waterdeep is like an investigation story. It's detectives. It's very Sherlock Holmes. Let's be real. I mean, the rogue that came out when this book was released, essentially, is Sherlock Holmes, the mastermind. I think. Well, it's either Mastermind or the Inquisitor, but one of them is based pretty much off Sherlock Holmes. So, what I'm doing is I'm going to forcibly put in downtime, and I've already warned my players of this previously. I messaged them all in the group chat and said, hey guys, I don't think this is a natural thing that's going to happen because when you give players time, they feel the need to fill it. So what's going to happen is we're going to do the necessary things that are immediate and need to happen, and then we're going to take 2 weeks of downtime. So be ready to explain what you'd like to do in that downtime. And this is taking in the understanding that all the missions you currently have aren't just put on hold. It's more like the trail's gone cold, or you need to do more investigating. In the meantime, during that investigation, what are you doing? That's the downtime won't be about how you're investigating. The downtime will be about what you're doing while you're investigating. Basically, between the times of sleeping and investigating, what are you doing in there? And that's because I want to give my players time to first of all, have time jumps in the actual months and weather, because I have things that I want to happen come winter. I want to give my players the option to do some proper Xanathar's Guide to Everything table rolling downtime. They can order themselves some like items, some weapons, some art. They can magic items and things like that as well. Perhaps they can go and try and earn some more money for the Trollskull Manor because they're still pretty far off of getting that built up. I mean, they can even make friends amongst the city, and so I can give them more informants amongst the other wards. So I'm kind of shoehorning it in there, but that's because I really want them to understand that this is a story where just because you have a mission doesn't mean that you have all the pieces to do it. So I'll be giving Damien the City of the Dead mission where zombies seem to be coming up at night. There's a necromancer who's running about and he has to go and meet with an informant who needs their help. Now, in terms of this downtime 2 weeks, the idea is that the informant actually isn't available. They aren't there. They don't know where they are. They've tried to find them and they have yet to find this person. And so after the 2 weeks of investigating, finding out more information, figuring out who they are, where they are, and how to find them, then they'll do that after the 2 weeks. As well as I plan to give Hootie and even Jaggerjack and Dr. Smiles / Giorno more missions. In terms of the whole elf killing, that's a perfect one to use as an example of trails going cold. Even though they may know who has possession of this weapon and they can pretty much prove it, they don't know who is actually killing the elves. It may be they know it's one person, but they saw multiple two drows plus this fake captain guy who's linked to them, and so they don't know who's actually killing the elves. And so during their investigation time, which is them staking out the docks, waiting for a murder, maybe even hearing about a murder on nights that they don't go and investigate, what are they doing? So I really want to give them this option of downtime. And if you're a DM, don't be afraid to just do this. Players really do like it. They really do like to say like, oh, well, actually, so even though we're like traveling or we're waiting for a message to come, in the downtime, I'm actually doing this with my character. It can actually build character development. It can build a story for them and give them an idea of what does my character do when they're not adventuring. So I'm not afraid to do it, but I thought I could do it in a more natural way, and it turns out I couldn't. So, you know, if you've got any advice, feel free to comment down below how you introduce downtime in a more natural way, because this is the first time that we're doing it consistently in a campaign. This is going to happen more often, whereas normally we do it in the break between campaigns. So yeah, that's the big one for this coming week, is actually running downtime, maybe finally finishing up the elves, seeing what they do there. I think they have enough information that they may just take that to the Zentarum. It's going to be a really interesting session. There could be combat. They may go to the City of the Dead after the downtime, and that would be the perfect time for them to do that. So I'll have all the zombies ready for that. I'll have all the encounters built. I'll have the necromancer. I'll change the actual encounter as well, because I find the encounters currently they're set for level 2. I have level 3 players, and they're more seasoned players, so they are smarter, so I can actually play around with it a bit more. So right now it'll be a couple zombies, a necromancer, and then I'm considering having maybe some traps. I feel like throwing in a few pitfall traps, maybe that fall down into tombs, into actual like dugout graveyards, and underneath maybe the necromancer has this full like laboratory that's underneath the graveyard, and so he's actually been setting this place up for weeks now, months even. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I really do look forward to it. I love a good creepy story, so the whole City of the Dead thing's going to be fun. I know it's a beautiful place, but at nighttime when there's zombies showing up, it can be scary. But that is the plan for next week. Let me know if you enjoyed the longer video with the timestamps, if I could get the timestamps put in. Comment down below anything that you would like to see from this channel. Comment down below any advice based off of all the things that I've said. Comment down below how your game is going. I love reading about it. I encourage people to message me on Instagram so I can talk D&D to them and hash out some ideas and talk about my experience. But down in the comments below, let me know just where you're up to and what's happening, because I do truly love reading this stuff. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you. Subscribe, like, comment, share it with a friend, and I'll see you next week. Oh, right, to get rid of the bodies of all the sleeping people, here's how they did it so it didn't actually make a commotion. First, Hootie was not allowed to write about it. Second, I totally forgot that we saw Hootie's rival, Gaxley Rudderbuster, there. And Hootie found his sleeping body because he failed the con check, stole all of his notes, unbuckled his belt, pulled his pants down, and now he has information on the false information on the Black Viper, that it is apparently Lady Castellanta's evil twin sister. So that's something that we may figure out more on later. But the really cool way that we got rid of the fact that we didn't want the nobles to be talking about it. So what they did is they closed the doors. The guards were woken back up. They got all of the sleeping bodies, put as many as they could in beds. Then they woke them up one at a time and told them that they'd been drinking too much and unfortunately the night was late and needed to go. And once those nobles had left, they then went and got some more nobles and then just cycled them through like this.